Alrighty, hey everybody. Welcome to our last three chapters of 21 Laws of Leadership. It has been an amazing study, and I hope that you have gleaned a lot of wonderful things from what we have learned. The one thing I will say about this book is it's a classic. When you have read something 4 times and still don't feel like you have exhausted everything it can teach you, I would say it's a keeper, and it's definitely worth going back through and revisiting some of the things. So I would just challenge everybody to keep it on their shelf for the future, because listening to this book study or reading it through for the first time as a gold or senior gold is going to be very different when you are listening and reading and working through it maybe as a ruby, senior ruby, or a jewel or a diamond, right? And so yes, it's just been really, really good. And I would say over these last 3 chapters that we're going to do, we're going to talk about the law of timing, the law of explosive growth, and then the very last one, which is the law of legacy. I would say the biggest thing with the law of timing is that I think it goes back to intuition, like leadership intuition, and being able to kind of foresee if something is going to be a flop or not. I think also leaders are willing to take risks and try, even if you feel like maybe the timing isn't perfect. It's definitely worth, giving it a try and pivoting if you feel like the timing was way off, right? I think timing can also relate to how we work our day. The timing of maybe when you do your reach outs or when you do certain activities in your business, like when you're going to go live. I usually try to go live during the day. I feel like I'm definitely fresher, thinking through like, what are your highest level activities and when are you at your peak energy, So thinking through even the timing of that can affect or impact the effectiveness of something. I think also, not that you have to wait until a certain time of day to message people, but we talk about timing in light of our posting, which is usually best received first thing in the morning, at lunchtime, or in the evening. And you can actually look up on Google best times to post, best times to go live. And there are certain days of the week that there's higher traffic on social media. So timing can apply even to social media and things that we do there. And so he says in the very beginning of this chapter that only the right action at the right time will bring success. And so, obviously that's the goal, right actions at right times. And I would say even the timing of what's going on in the world. For example, 2020, that was the best year we've had in Plexus so far. And when we looked at the state of things, I think some of the natural tendencies for some people was basically turn and run, hide, assume that nobody was interested in Plexus or what we had to offer. And actually there was some certain industries, certain businesses that really boomed during 2020. And health and wellness and network marketing did really well. And for some people, they really tapped into their businesses during that time because there was a lot of, financial and economic uncertainty. So timing even of, what's going on in the world can impact the effectiveness of certain things. I think that even the commonality of Zoom meetings, that was one thing that was really utilized in 2020. And now people don't think it's strange or weird or hard to navigate anymore, right? So Zoom is kind of one of those ways to connect that has been, way more popular and prevalent since 2020. He says on page 203 that timing is often the difference between success and failure in an endeavor. And there's a couple different points that he made. So number one is the wrong action at the wrong time leads to disaster. So I think this is, talking about being able to read the room, right? So sometimes even the timing of bringing up Plexus to somebody, you can use the law of timing to guide you in that. Sometimes you can feel that it's not the right timing, or maybe it's time to lead something in your Plexus business. Maybe it's time to start doing vendor events, or maybe it's time to start doing monthly or weekly sip and sees, or maybe it's like, oh, wow, I have a bunch of new leaders on the team and they really want to grow. Maybe I should do a small group book study over, maybe just a general, network marketing book. John Maxwell actually has a little tiny network marketing book called The Power of Five. If you haven't read it, time to read it. It's good. Or recommend it to your newest people. Okay, that's a great one, even to gift for going silver, because it's the basics of what they'll need to be successful in our industry. And so, okay, the wrong action at the wrong time leads to disaster. And then the right action at the wrong time brings resistance. And then number 3 is the wrong action at the right time is a mistake. So, and then number 4 is the right action at the right time results in success. And so he talks about good timing, good leadership timing requires many things: understanding, maturity, confidence, decisiveness, experience, intuition, and preparation. So there's kind of a magic formula, right, for why something might flop versus why something might be a success. And he said people who are naturally entrepreneurial often possess a strong sense of timing. They instinctively or intuitively know when it's time to make a move or seize an opportunity. So those are some things to be considering. I know I was just thinking about a little IPA challenge that Carrie and I ran, probably 3, 4, 5 years ago. In August, it was the last 2 weeks of August, we decided to do this IPA challenge, and it totally fell flat. I don't know that anyone participated, but we dutifully copied and pasted and offered the incentive, whatever it was. But I don't think anyone tapped in that week or two. And to me, nothing is a failure if we learn from it. And sometimes we do things and it feels like a failure, or like, why didn't this work? Maybe it's you hosted a sip and see this month and nobody came. I actually had one scheduled for Sunday. That was yesterday. Yeah. And I ended up just being like, reading the room here. I'm not getting hardly any responses back from, offering to host this event. So I just ended up calling it like, you know what? I would be more than happy to host an online event if you guys have, some people in the wings. But I just felt like timing is not right. And so that's something to consider as a leader, something to be to just be conscious of. And even with a sip and see, I always think it's a good idea to link arms with like one other person if you have someone in your area. That way, if something kind of goes south and for whatever reason the timing is crazy and maybe people don't show, there's a couple things to consider there. Like, what was the preparation like? How could you have pivoted? What could you have done differently? But I think an easy pivot is to go live, share your stories, go online, right? It's not a loss, it's not a failure, it's always a learning curve, right? So okay, and then he talks about strategy and basically applying what we learned in light of the law of timing. So think through how timing has impacted your business in specific ways, either for good or for bad. I think we've had some really, really well-timed events where a lot of people have come. I know 2020 we really felt like we needed to be hosting events because the world was shut down, but we were willing to open our house. And if people were willing to take the risk and come over, we were willing to host, right? And so it was kind of a crazy year. We had a newborn baby and there was a lot going on, but we just were guided by that law of timing and law of intuition. So think through in your business how the law of timing has impacted you in a beneficial way, or maybe in a seemingly negative way, and take inventory of those things. Okay, chapter 20 is the law of explosive growth. How to add growth, lead followers, and multiply and lead leaders. Okay, so I thought it was interesting that he said that his dad paid him to read books that he knew would help him and sent him to conferences when he was a teenager. So that is super cool. And he talked about the law of the inner circle and the importance of developing a team. So he had discovered the law of explosive growth, and that is the law of explosive growth is kind of twofold. To add growth, you have to lead followers, and to multiply, you must lead leaders. So rhetorical question, but which would you rather? Would you rather have growth and lead followers, or would you rather multiply and lead leaders? I think it goes without saying, we all would prefer to lead leaders and to attract those people. And so, I mean, the way to have explosive growth honestly begins with us developing leadership skills within ourselves. And we learn that by doing this business, right? And tapping into the law of timing, the law of intuition, the various laws that he's taught us through, and applying those to Plexus, right? Which means our businesses, we have to treat our businesses like businesses, not hobbies. This is not something that we're just doing sometimes when it's convenient, but it's something that is always on our radar. Like, what am I doing for my business this week? Where are my hours that I'm going to invest time in my business, in my people? What could I be doing to create team culture? What can I, thinking through, just kind of getting your wheels, your creative juices running in light of what you're growing, right? And that's honestly, that's leadership. It's not waiting for somebody to come and give you an idea. It's you getting creative, having the idea, and actually implementing it. And then after you implement it and do it, then you evaluate. You're like, okay, what went well? What went south? What would I change and do differently next time? And then you schedule the next thing so that you can do it better the next time. Okay, so he says, you will be able to reach your potential and help your organization reach its loftiest goals only if you begin developing leaders instead of merely attracting followers. Leaders who develop leaders experience an incredible multiplication effect in organizations that can be achieved in no other way, not by increasing resources, costs, profit margins, systems, quality procedures, or doing anything else. The only way to experience an explosive level of growth is to do the math, leader math. I don't know if you guys have seen that sunburst, which is basically explosive. It's just like a visual of explosive growth. And so instead of recruiting 100 people and just being on that hamster wheel of recruit all the time, what if you recruited 10 leaders and then they each recruited 50? That's actually way more than 100 people. But see what I mean? The difference between recruitment and like triplex customers who may or may not stay on the products even, right? Versus developing and attracting leaders who will then impact and recruit customers and develop more leaders. Okay, so that is the goal. I liked on page 214, he said, leaders are naturally impatient. I can see this in myself, actually. All the leaders I know are. Can you see it in yourself? Do you feel a little impatient sometimes? Leaders want to move fast. They want to see the vision fulfilled. They delight in progress. Good leaders quickly assess where an organization is. And so I'm just going to point out really quickly that the ability to sit back and evaluate, to look at the numbers, to sit back and figure out the key metrics, look at, pull some reports, look through your people, kind of look at numbers, even just think about the people that you have. So assess where your organization is and project where it needs to go, and then have strong ideas about how to get there. Okay, so if this feels like a foreign concept, or maybe you're newer in your business and you these are not the ways that you think, come back to this, because as your organization grows and as you recruit more people to do the business with you, then there will be an aspect of stepping back and being like, okay, evaluation time, what do we need to do differently? And that is a hallmark of an entrepreneur and the hallmark of a leader. The problem is that most time the people and the organization lag behind the leader. For that reason, leaders always feel a tension between where they and their people are and where they ought to be. I've experienced this tension my entire life. In every organization I have been a part of, I've had a strong sense of where it should go. I even felt that way as a kid. That's interesting. Okay, so how do you relieve the tension between where the organization is and where you want it to be? And here's the answers. If you develop yourself, you can experience personal success. Okay, so for example, if we put that in Plexus terms, if you develop it yourself, and you work on the first thing, which is like basically learning how to market and learning how to recruit, you'll experience personal success. You'll get to silver and senior silver and gold pretty much on your own, unless you are already working on development skills, which you totally may be, especially if you have a leader that's teaching you to keep an eye out for those things where you're starting to get some +1s, you're starting to help some people share and things like that. Even if they don't have, people signed up yet, the fact that you started that duplication process is a win. Okay, so definitely count that as a win. If you develop a team, your organization can experience growth. Okay, so that's really at the like senior gold ruby level where you're starting to develop a team, and you have people that are starting to share with you on your team. And then if you develop leaders, okay, so that would be the jewel ranks and diamonds and beyond, right? Develop leaders, and I would also add to that, attract leaders, okay? Your organization can achieve explosive growth, and that's where you want to be. You can grow by leading followers, but if you want to maximize your leadership and help your organization reach its potential, you have to develop leaders. And there's no other way to experience explosive growth. And then he describes leaders who attract followers need to be needed. Leaders who develop leaders want to be succeeded. So if you have a fear of somebody passing you up, then, well, one, I think you might have control issues. And two, if you don't want to be succeeded, then I would say you want to be followed. You want to be attracting just followers all the time. Versus if you are willing to be succeeded, that means you're going to be willing to put yourself out there, have the scary conversations, and recruit people even better than yourself. So excitement comes from becoming a leader. When you speak, people listen. When you want to get something done, you can enlist other people to help you. So you're delegating, right? Having followers can make you feel needed and important. However, that's a pretty shallow reason to pursue leadership. Okay, so then he talks about leaders who attract followers, develop the bottom 20%. So always just focusing on the neediest ones. Okay, leaders who develop leaders develop the top 20%, meaning the people that are running on your team, sometimes you feel like they don't need you. They actually do need you, probably more so than they'll ever say. And the true leaders aren't going to probably ever ask you for help, but you need to be there with them, helping and asking, what can I do to help you? Or what would be helpful to you? What questions do you have? And being willing to invest in that. It says, when you're leading a group of people who typically ask for the most time and attention, who typically does? It's the weakest ones, right? So if you allow them to, they will consume 80% or more of your time. However, proactive leaders who practice the law of explosive growth don't allow the bottom 20% to take all their time. They seek out the best 20%, the people with the greatest leadership potential, and they invest their time developing them. They know that if they develop the best will help the rest. Okay, and then leaders who focus on attracting followers, they focus on weaknesses. Leaders who develop leaders focus on strengths. And we've talked about this before. It's like you can develop your strengths to be even stronger, right? And so it's kind of one of those things that I think that sometimes people want to just work on their weaknesses, but actually if you tap into your strengths, you're going to become even better at those things, and then you can delegate the weaknesses. Okay, and then leaders who attract followers treat everyone the same. Leaders who develop leaders treat individuals differently. So he just said leaders who develop leaders give rewards, resources, and responsibility based on results. And so it goes without saying, like if you see someone that's really rising up in their leadership, you're going to recognize them, you're going to reward them differently than someone that's not showing up and doing certain things. So anyways, then he talks about those who attract followers spend time with others. Leaders who develop leaders invest time in others. So that's really important and something to consider, just like being really intentional with where you spend your time, who you spend it with. Okay, and then it talks about growing by addition, which would be the leaders who attract followers versus growing by multiplication, which be you're attracting leaders. And so add 10 followers to your organization and you have the power of 10. Add 10 leaders to your organization and you have the power of 10 leaders, all of 10 leaders times all of the followers and the leaders they influence. It's a leader math. It's the difference between addition and multiplication. And so you're actually growing your team by teams instead of just individuals. So, and then he talked about how it's not easy. That's why a lot of people don't do it. It's not just you add water and stir, and not necessarily a formula, but it takes a lot of time, energy, and resources. One, because leaders are like eagles, they don't flock. And oh, who's the guy Justin likes to listen to? Oh, forgetting his name now. He's not Zig Ziglar. Anyways, it's you can't send your ducks to eagle school. Recruit eagles, find them good, right? And there's an aspect of developing, right? And mentorship and things like that. John Rohn, yeah. There's an aspect of developing and mentorship and things like that, but we find them good, right? And I would say the people, that have really, been in, or the leaders on our team, I feel like they come in good, if that makes sense. It's not that we haven't grown, right? Because I think there's an aspect of growing in leadership and learning and expanding skill sets, but we're not trying to create somebody into someone that they're not. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyways, he's just saying most people are followers. Some are producers, few are leaders, and they're hard to find, but they can be found. And so we need to be on the lookout for those types of people. And then he talked about adding value, because that will help the leaders you lead be willing to stay with you. Yeah, leaders don't flock. Okay, and then I really liked this actually. This evaluation on page 221 would be something to really utilize and evaluate, because you can think through the people on your team and rate them in light of the list of leadership qualities. So, and then there's a grading scale for it. And you can even plug yourself in that as well. And I think they're good reflection questions even for ourselves. And he talked about mining gold. When we're in the mine digging for gold, we're not looking for the dirt, we're looking for the gold, right? And so these are people that we would be looking for. This would be a great dream team quality list to borrow from, because we all want more leaders on the team. Okay, and then the last chapter is the law of legacy. A leader's lasting value is measured by succession. And so this just reminds me of begin with the end in mind. And so he posed the question, what do you want people to say at your funeral? And basically creating the law of legacy is because our success or lasting value is measured by succession, right? And so we want people standing on our shoulders. There's a quote by Jackie Robinson. He said, quote, "A life isn't significant except for its impact on others' lives." So when we think about people that have created legacies, they didn't live selfishly. They lived to impact and bless other people. I really liked, page 226. He says, so same idea as the beginning of the chapter, but someday people will summarize your life in a single sentence. My advice, pick it now. And so back to that whole concept of begin with the end in mind and live the legacy that you want to leave. And he talked about 7 major areas of influence. So 1 is religion, economics, government, family, media, education, and sports. And he said that in the early years of his career, he had influence in just one of those areas, but he is trying to reach and gain credibility in more of the others. And he said that he seeks to do that by building bridges, relating to people on a heart-to-heart level, and seeking to give more than I receive. And I think that's really important to note, to be a giver and to become what we desire to see in others. So, and then I liked how he talked about achievement comes when you do big things by yourself. Success comes when you empower followers to do big things for them. Significance comes when they develop leaders to do great things with them. And then the last thing is legacy comes when they put leaders in position to do great things without them. And I've heard, I think it was Brooke Hemingway said, evaluate whether your business would survive the bus test. And the bus test is basically you get run over by a bus and you go to heaven. What would happen to your business? Would it continue to grow even without your leadership there? If so, then you have a legacy business. You have created something that will continue to roll and grow even without your input, because you truly have leaders in place. So and then he has the take action and apply area in the back. And he asked us to consider why we are here. What skills and gifts do we possess that relate to our highest potential as a human? Who will you invest to carry on your legacy? Who will stand on your shoulders and do more than you did? And then he said, begin investing in them today. And so a couple of notes that I wrote down is, you're here for a reason. Learn to lead yourself first. Show up every day. And you're not missing anything. Or if you do feel like you are, then that's maybe an area that you need to develop, like even to be able to trust yourself in light of what you need to be doing, right? I think that we don't always have to look to other people to tell us what to do. We can actually ask ourselves, what's the next step? And if we don't know this next step, then we can ask ourselves to take a guess. Sometimes our brain just doesn't, sometimes our brain wants to be lazy and not consider possibilities or creative ways of continued growth. I think the biggest thing to remember is that legacy includes others. Okay. And then the very last little section is about just the conclusion, that everything rises and falls on leadership. And so I think that this book has once again, just shined the light on 21 different aspects of leadership that we can all learn to be better at, we can all seek to grow in. And, this book is a wonderful resource to continue to go back to and glean and learn from, because I don't know, and my personal take is that we're not done growing in leadership until we go home to heaven. And until then, we'll just keep learning. All right. Thanks, guys. Congrats for being on.